Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Earlier this year, we became somewhat acquainted with CyberForce, a team of tech-enhanced heroes from the Top Cow universe. Well, a couple of them, anyway. Now, rather than some random Marvel heroes, they're meeting the Justice League of America, as they face a former friend that's now become an enemy. First Heatwave and Killraiser, now this. What is it about being in CyberForce that lends its members to turning evil? I'm taking issue with JLA/CyberForce, so let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. The cover features a stylized collection of the various heroes, some more prominent than others for obvious reasons. Meanwhile, the threats they face are in the background. It's a fine cover, though the banner design at the top is rather atypical, and it actually feels like the kind of cover you'd see on a trade. Considering this is a one-shot, I'm not sure if that's fitting or not. Written by Joe Kelly, with art by Doug Mankey, Norm Rapmond, and David Barron, we begin in Budapest, Hungary, one of the most fun city names to say, where a truck of soldiers is driving through a village, driven by a corporal explaining to his CO that an archaeology project has revealed catacombs further underground than previously thought possible, with something indescribable inside. A good version of Batman v Superman? A strip of energy whips past the soldiers hanging off the sides of the truck, and they all fall off decapitated, to the corporal's horror. Nice try, fellas! If you think the old lobbed-off head trick is getting you a day off, you've got another thing coming! Then someone with specially colored dialogue rips the roof off the cab and tells the remaining soldiers they aren't invited to his family business, then proceeds to mutilate them. At least the terrifying murder creature apologized. That's gotta count for something, right? Elsewhere, Corinne Taylor, the CyberForce speedster known as Velocity, runs across the desert, leaving a trail of icicle-like shards in her wake. Paint those things just right and you've got yourself an Etsy business. Leaving random glass in an arid wasteland would normally be amusing to her, but now she's just trying to get her mind off Robert Bearclaw, aka Ripclaw, teammate and boyfriend, as she flashes back to a time when they were together, and he was pontificating on how, despite those they've lost to a virus they both have, he takes solace in having met Corinne, holding no anger towards the world or the people who poisoned them. But the guy who wrote first in the comments of my Darkwing Duck video essay, totally angry at him. Screw that guy. She thinks about what she unleashed in his honor, out of love. Velocity would do anything for love, and she totally did that. Meatloaf tried to warn her, but she just wouldn't listen. She begins to cry, and since her tears could potentially have the impact of a bullet, not sure if that's true, but you never know, she stops in Paris when the team calls on her comlink that they've found him. Meanwhile, on the JLA watchtower, Flash is zipping around on monitor duty, waiting for the normally punctual J'onn J'onzz to relieve him so he can go home to his wife. Batman asks if he's happened to check the Martian calendar lately. Why do I have a feeling I'm a selfish jerk? This is Wally West, so insert your own Heroes in Crisis-related could-be-worse joke here. Their green friend is meditating, recalling a festival on his home planet, celebrating friendship, peace, and above all, family. Also known as the feast day of Saint Vin Diesel. Memories of this holiday are meticulously stored in J'onn's mind, but on a bad day, memories aren't enough. The pain of his loss is too vast. An alarm brings him back to the present, and his more human form. Work is good. Spend a few years in retail and get back to me on that one, sport. We return to Budapest, where cybernetic zombie corpses of Russian naval officers have killed over a dozen people, in service to a monster that was once the spiritual center of CyberForce, who we see on this 2-page spread, fighting the zombies off as Velocity evacuates the civilians. Devil's Ring gave us some focus on totally not a Psylocke ripoff Cyblade and Sharpshooter Ballistic, and they're joined by Stryker, whose robotic arms are an arsenal unto themselves. I mean, 3 limbs on one side certainly doesn't seem all that practical to me, but there's something to be said about the uniqueness of the concept, I suppose. Corinne hears the sound of Ripclaw's voice, only for it to be a trick. He's actually speaking through an undead minion, telling her to take a hint as it launches an attack. Cyblade comes in with a saving slash, taking out the threat and urging her teammate to accept that Ripclaw isn't who he used to be, and as she keeps hoping that there's a remnant of him that remains, they may all be killed. However, Velocity isn't merely sorrowful, but also riddled with guilt since her surrogate family are unaware that she's to blame for the horror they're fighting, and much more. Don't tell me she's the one that got Lower Decks canceled! As Stryker and Ballistic fire on some zombies in a church, a truck full of even more enemies barrels towards them. Velocity is about to clear out any innocents inside, but she's outrun by a red blur. On your left, Slowpoke! Chris Evans? The JLA arrive on their own dedicated two-pager. I count a dozen or so hostiles. You including me in that number, Superman? Why would he? Are they having some kind of bro spat, or is this some kind of cheeky dialogue to denote how dangerous the rest of the team think Batman is? Anyway, Jean says these zombie Borgs don't appear to be alive, while Wonder Woman introduces the team to CyberForce and warns that they'll suffer immediate consequences if they're in league with this threat. Seems a little hostile for the Amazonian ambassador of peace, but this does not stop Stryker from smiling like an idiot, apparently enamored with Diana, as he says they're already helping. The speedsters seem to get along quickly, as do Batman and Cyblade, discussing techniques while fighting together. Any chance you're looking for a sparring partner? I wasn't, until just now. Hey, baby, wanna get engaged only to break it off because my alternate universe dad and one of my arch-nemeses are plotting to ruin my life? And if bat flirting wasn't weird enough for you, Superman gets in Stryker's face when he gives a zombie a bullet massage. He feels that maybe the afflicted may yet be saved, but the cyborg sasses back that their foes are beyond help. I guess the zombie's mechanical sound effects are enough to convince Supes, who smiles as he tells Manhunter to inform the team they aren't dealing with living organisms, which I feel was already kind of relayed when John said earlier they didn't appear to be alive. Even so, given this situation where these people can't be helped, that smirk seems rather uncharacteristic of the Man of Steel. But not everyone gets along as well. After Ballistic makes a kind of atheistic, snarky remark about Diana's reference to the Greek pantheon, the Amazon name-drops Hades as someone she knows personally, so the sniper should zip it, while Ballistic retorts that Diana should wear armor if she's going to find herself in a gunfight. Did she just say that Wonder Woman's outfit was so last year? Velocity has secured the last of the civilians when she feels the Martian's mental contact, explained as her sorrow reaching out to him, like finds like and all that. Several zombies start retreating into the lower level, so Stryker calls for his speedster to run recon so they can follow, and doesn't feel like there's any time to explain everything to the League.
Are you sure it wouldn't be faster to just tell us what happened?
No! I said there's no time to explain, and I stick by that!
So, Jean decides to connect their minds telepathically, so they can share knowledge instantaneously. Ew, I'm getting Stryker's internet search history. Ah, I'm getting Ballistic's internet search history! Give me the brain bleach! Brain bleach! With surgical precision, only the surface history of the groups are shared. The League's common thirst for justice, and CyberForce's fight against the group's cyber data. However, the Martian senses something amiss, stemming from Velocity. They've been hunting their former comrade, who used to be a gentle guy, if the name Ripclaw was an indicator enough. While the team thinks he's been driven cuckoo banana nutters by a virus, while in search of immortality, Corinne knows that's not all entirely true, claiming to be responsible for what he's become. Jean promises not to say anything, but says a kind lie can be more damaging than the harsh truth. When their link is ended, Corinne stays quiet on what she knows, and says it's none of the Martian's business. Be that as it may, Jean can sympathize with making errors out of love and loss, and warns that living in the past invites madness into one's heart. He said the same thing about the 2017 DuckTales reboot. As they travel through a tunnel, Stryker promising he'll be the first to put a bullet in the head of that thing that used to be his friend, though Superman admits he won't let him, they find Ripclaw on another two-page spread, along with several of his techno-slaves approaching a large monster corpse with energy shooting out of it.
Friends make good food. Seriously, you need to try Stryker's paella, second only to Cyblade's tiramisu.
Ballistic Blood starts feeling funny, and Corinne says she hears singing, thinking that it's God. But Ripclaw says no, it's the old ones, calling for those who know how to hear.
Well, like most members of America's cultural elite, I worship Pan, the goat god. But thanks for the thought.
Superman's had enough and flies in, despite Stryker's warning that something isn't right. and the farm boy gets a nasty slash to his torso from Ripsy, since he isn't family. And despite the blood here, it's gone on the next page, so it just looks like Soups is wincing from having his suit torn. "Oh man, that's the third suit this week. Ma's gonna kill me." While the madman orders his minions to claim his birthright, Manhunter saves Velocity from being smushed by a boulder, since she was so dazed and distracted piecing things together in her head that Robert Bearclaw was the first to hear the Song of Creation, and she's realized what the orb inside the giant's chest really is. A good version of Josh Trank's Fantastic Four? Ripclaw wants his old teammates to join him, embrace their destiny, and kill the outsiders, while his techno-slaves near the alien corpse are stronger than the previous ones. Velocity psychically tells Jean that she and her team aren't the mutated humans with cyber implants they always thought they were. CyberForce was created using alien source DNA and the same organic tech found in the room, from creatures like the great big dead one before them. She learned the truth of their origins after the team died. Not sure if that means she survived or if her soul somehow gained this knowledge and used the so-called God tech to bring them all back to life, better than before, with 30% fewer calories than other teams of cyborg superheroes. Something went wrong with Ripclaw, however. For whatever reason, his body was repaired, but not his spirit. That glowing orb, the pure form of God tech, is the source of CyberForce, and Ripclaw could do anything with it. But if Corinne got to it first, she could restore his soul. Wonder Woman lobs off the villain's arm with her lasso, I guess. Didn't know that's a thing it could do. While Superman is starting to recover from that wound that's suddenly bleeding again. That hurt. I don't usually do hurt. Let's be honest, no one's going to top Johnny Cash's definitive version of that song. Before her old flame can make contact with the orb, Corinne makes another plea to let her help him, as Jean warns her that he senses something amiss, even if he can't read Robert's mind. He, however, has distracted them so his severed arm, having grown mechanical spider legs, could drop down and land on the artifact. This results in an enormous replica of Ripclaw digging its way to the surface, with the original's intent on getting revenge on the world that killed CyberForce. Our heroes are quick to follow, while still contending with the normal-sized original, and the big one sprouting other facsimiles from its body. Man, you thought you had ugly pimples. For all the heroes' attacks, Kaiju Claw just keeps regenerating, and Corinne objects to just smashing the God Tech orb, if it can still be used to save their old friend. Flash has an idea to weaken the enemy's grip on the orb with less time to heal from ballistics shots. By holding her waist and I guess using the speed force through her, the sharpshooter is able to fire 10,000 rounds in 3 seconds, all at Big Bobby Bearclaw's head. This does the trick, incurring so much damage instantaneously that the main Ripclaw feels it, and he calls out to Corinne, swearing to make the others pay for turning her against him. He didn't seem all that concerned or affectionate towards her when he used one of his cyber zombies to trick her into letting her guard down so he could try eviscerating her. I've heard relationships can be complicated, but this is just ridiculous. Ripclaw launches wires from his arms. "You didn't say he could do that. So f***ing sue me!" Don't tempt the man. He's rich and can afford really good lawyers. He's likely to win that suit, and your 3 mechanical arms will be used by Alfred to wax the giant penny in the Batcave. As Cyblade attacks the artifact lodged in the giant's skull, Ripsy's wires strike Martian Manhunter from behind.
I reiterate, only a big fat rat would shoot a guy in the back.
There's an explosion, not that you'd know it by looking at any of our heroes. "You have 4 arms, and you couldn't hold on to Ripclaw during the explosion.
You've got a real problem playing with others, don't you?"
Who among you can honestly say you've never used tranquilizer darts on your opponent when you're losing a game of Connect 4? Flash finds Velocity, who's doing much better than expected, since she's recovered the God Tech.
Do you hear it? It's still singing. I mean, I'm not the biggest Pearl Jam fan, but still.
She zips around, excited at the prospect of saving Robert, until everyone discovers John Jones, motionless, even down to his mitochondria, according to Superman, effectively dead as a result of Ripclaw's tech attempting to bond with the alien's cells. Finding the villain won't bring him back, but the Leaguers figure the orb will, that the man who saved Corinne's life isn't so far gone that he can't be revived by it. She refuses, saying that the orb only has enough power for one last use, and she's saving it to help the man she loves. Stryker insists that it's the young woman's call, since she knows more about this stuff than anyone, and in a panel that'd be humorous under different circumstances, he starts staring Superman down. Isn't that adorable?
Look, he thinks he's people.
Honestly, even Clark almost looks like he's smiling. She makes a run for it when Flash tries to grab it from her. Wonder Woman ensnares Ballistic, Supes insists the CyberForce leader call this off, and Cyblade tells Bats they probably won't be able to talk this through.
Damn it. And I was going to ask you out.
He'd spend half the time ominously going over his grim past and hectic life, and how dangerous it is for him to have any kind of real romance. You may have dodged a bullet here, sweetheart. As the scuffle ensues, Ripclaw watches for a moment before deciding to hightail it. Narration mentions how a Budapest reporter would suggest in the next day's paper perhaps the monster released some manner of psychotropic gas, causing the heroes to start fighting each other. It will never occur to him that sorrow might have the same effect. Sorrow, or the old debate of Kirk versus Picard as best Enterprise captain.
It's Picard, by the way.
Wonder Woman keeps deflecting Ballistic's shots. Stryker, bless his heart, thought his robot arms would do much against Superman, but hey, he felt that third punch. There's a cybernetic feather in his cap. And Flash tries to steal Velocity's speed. Corinne figures she's the fastest person he's tried this trick on, and isn't letting go of him, as she starts to overload the fastest man alive. However, they trip or something, I'm not sure, and she loses her hold on the orb, finally grasping it as it lands on Jean's chest. She starts hearing what sounds like music, only to realize it's singing, a song of the Martian Manhunter's life. As on a kind of ethereal plane, I imagine, she watches him ascend a golden pyramid. Much like in Dragon Ball, the Martian afterlife has a check-in station, but involves a lot of walking an upward incline. Turns out cardio is an important facet of the Red Planet's religion. As Batman allows Cyblade to get in close so he can activate his belt taser on both of them, yet he still can't figure out why he doesn't go on more second dates, Velocity watches Jean reach the summit, to his deceased family, realizing just how honorable he is. Someone whom a non-crazy evil Ripclaw would have considered a true warrior. Let's get a second opinion on that.
24 is the gateway to heroic salvation.
Okay, that proved nothing. Moving on. There's a look of discordance on his wife's face that he's too busy feeling at peace to really notice. Corinne approaches, saying it may not yet be his time, and she can bring him back. He argues that she doesn't know what he's lost, but Velocity tells him to listen to Mrs. Jones. Little music reference for you there, kids. Back in the physical world, Superman is magnanimous in victory. Ballistic exhausted all her ammo facing Wonder Woman.
No more bullets? Hey, laughing boy, no more bullets.
And Cyblade is taking that electrocution pretty well, still so impressed that she insists on getting Batman's number. It's giant bat silhouette in a yellow circle, aimed up the sky. Area code Justice. He politely declines. You know, dead friend, a team that'll need his help. Then everyone looks over to see Martian Manhunter alive, embracing Corinne as they both smile, and the God-Tech orb is exhausted, restoring him to life. Like Stryker was apparently hoping she would.
Yeah, but I think we should do the mega happy ending.
Oh, the mega happy ending, that's doable.
An undetermined amount of time later, Jean is out chilling on the surface of the moon because he was feeling the watchtower a bit too confining. Diana approaches, curious why he came back if, in the few moments his consciousness left the physical realm, he saw his family in heaven, on the golden pyramid, Tadoon. Which sounds like what a stage magician accidentally says after the rabbit jumps out of his hat before its cue, and he tries to pass it all off as part of the act. Even a telepathic translation of his experience couldn't fully describe it. Each step up the structure showed memories of his life on Mars, and his family waiting for him at the top, just as he remembered them. Even when Corinne found him, he had no intention of returning, until his wife told him that his life was a song, that his every action was a note in a melody that honored her and their children. If he was willing to bear it, they'd like to hear more, so encouraged him to return home and sing. Which is why I'm starting a thrash metal band. He credits Corinne for giving him this gift of peace, and hopes to one day return the favor. The speedster in question, meanwhile, is simply resting on a plateau, not running, but instead immersing in silence, when her team approaches. They're confident they'll find more god tech to fix their old teammate, but first, Corinne wants her surrogate family to hear the truth, close the book on the past to better handle the present. She wants them to promise not to hate her for what she's about to reveal, and Stryker promises they'd never hate her, because they're all family. That was JLA/CyberForce, and I thought it was alright. The threat was sufficiently big enough that it not only required the League's involvement, but also warranted more than just them to deal with it. We get about as much info as I think those who weren't reading CyberForce would need about the team, regarding Ripclaw's motivations, Velocity's secrecy, while not feeling like reading a bunch of back issues was necessary. The interactions between the different heroes I thought was nicely varied. Some of them got along pretty well from the get-go, like Flash and Corinne, while others weren't as friendly, like Diana, who's met gods, and the more atheistic Ballistic. I didn't really dislike Batman flirting with Cyblade. It shouldn't be surprising that he'd be attracted to a beautiful woman that can not only handle herself in a fight, but also knows a variety of martial arts. Though admittedly, it did seem a little weird, since I hadn't read this story before now, and the more modern comics of the past decade have portrayed Bruce as overly serious and almost exclusively interested in women with more feline fashion sense. Heaven help us if he ever warps over to the Marvel Universe and gets into a tussle with Felicia Hardy. And really, this book deserves points for flipping the usual crossover dynamic, with the heroes working together at first and then later fighting with each other, a reverse of what we usually get. The League felt mostly on point personality-wise, though it felt like Batman had a line or two that seemed weird and out of place. But maybe I'm forgetting something from the mid-aughts that makes his line about Supes considering him a hostile make more sense. I couldn't really tell you if anyone from CyberForce was the same or not, since my only familiarity with, two of them is from Devil's Reign. At most, Cyblade seemed much randier when she met the Dark Knight. Though in hindsight, it's a little weird. Ballistic mentioned that Stryker spends time with 3 half-naked women on the daily, and the team we see is just him and 3 women. So unless the guy's got his own harem, it seems like they have a very relaxed dress code at their HQ. And it requires a clarification of context when he calls them family. The exposition for Velocity's revelation and what happened to Ripclaw feels organic enough without feeling stilted, and Godtech is a sufficient MacGuffin to either threaten our heroes or be their salvation. Though this was not merely a big superhero slugfest or giant monster brawl. At the core is the theme of grief and how people cope with it. Jean holds on to memories of his loved ones through the observance of tradition, while trying to ground himself in the present through his work with the Justice League. While this would ultimately be what his family wanted, he never considered that, which is why he was still unsettled deep down. Velocity, meanwhile, was unable to resolve her strife because of what she was keeping from her teammates, as well as being accused of living in the past, holding out hope to convince her old love of the error of his ways, and treating him like the man he was. She should have just told Ripclaw that the gentle soul he used to be was the greatest man she'd ever known, then he'd instantly turn good again. Just ask Cyblade, it worked for her. Of course, then Heatwave died almost immediately after, but hey, details. Though you could argue Martian Manhunter was living in the past as well, since he's taking time from work to reminisce about a festival on his homeworld. But he did at least acknowledge he's made mistakes and urges Corinne to make better choices. While maybe these themes of dealing with or overcoming grief may not have been relayed perfectly, though not badly either, I'd say, I felt the parallel sorrows of the two worked well off each other, and made for a believable potential friendship, even though an image like this might influence other ideas in readers.
The shipper, able to detect romantic connections where clearly none exist.
C-3PO and Chewbacca are definitely a couple.
I didn't have a problem with the art, I liked it well enough, though if I had to criticize one thing, I'd say that the Martians here look a lot more like Marvel's Impossible Man than other artists who have portrayed their default forms. If Impy thought Mr. Mixius Pitlick was his brother, who do you think Jean is? His second cousin? This book is a decent read, good fights, fun interactions, while being more of a thinker than some other stories. That said, I did overall feel a bit tepid about it, maybe because of my lack of familiarity with the Top Cow characters. While having read relevant back issues of CyberForce doesn't seem like a necessity, these events may mean more to readers with more personal investment in that team. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.